Greetings and welcome to I Care Leadership Live. This is the podcast for I Care leaders who want to level up their leadership, create better cultures, and improve the financial results of their clinics. Now, let's join the show. Greetings, everybody. Today's topic is, do you need another manager in your eye care clinic? And I imagine that this is a question that a lot of you think about because you're probably saying, I'm overloaded. I don't have enough time to do all the things that I need to do. And you've probably given some thought to whether you need help as a manager. And I'm here to talk about that. That's a key question, and I'm glad you're asking yourself that. And what we're going to get into here in this podcast is, what are some things to think about? What are the reasons why you should consider adding a manager or supervisor or leadership position? Maybe some of the things that would make you not do that. And maybe a little bit about what to look for if you decide you're going to do that. So what are some reasons to add a manager, and what are some of the signs that you need to add another leader in your office? Well, one thing to think about is, what kind of feedback are you getting from your employees? You know, if your employees are saying, we can't find a manager, we don't feel supported, when we have an issue, the manager is unavailable. That is a real red flag, because you need your employees to feel supported because they're over there handling issues without you, and they're feeling unprepared and underinformed about how to handle those issues, or else they wouldn't be looking for you. And so if they are looking for support and not getting it, that is a bad sign. The other thing that can happen is they may just say, you know what, I don't really enjoy being somewhere where I can never get my manager's attention or get time from my manager. And that's a real thing. You know, if you're a technician or you work at the front desk, you are under a lot of pressure. You know, patients are coming in and they're lining up and they're being demanding, and they have questions and issues. And as an employee, you're trying to handle those the best you can. But there will be times when you feel unsure and you want to have a manager step in. And if that manager is unavailable, you're not going to feel good. You're not going to feel good. You're going to feel unsupported, and it's going to cause you stress. And if you know anything about how I look at employee retention, the first thing I think about is neurology and safety. And if you are doing things that make employees feel unsafe, i.e. or e.g., for example, not being there when they need you, that they are going to feel unsafe. They're going to feel like they're going to feel a threat, perceive an emotional threat. And that tends to produce turnover. And so, all coming back full circle here, if your employees are feeling unsupported, we need to add some additional supports. And sometimes that comes in the form of a new manager, or maybe like a team lead, or some level of structure to give them support. Okay, so that's one sign. Another sign is if you are managing more than, say, 15 direct reports. If you have more than 15 direct reports, then you are likely starting to become less accessible. It's hard to really have a good relationship with each person individually if you're over 15 or so. Now, that is going to vary a little bit depending on the experience of the employees and their competence. But assuming you're dealing with an average array of employees, average array of experience levels, I would say around 15 is when things start to break down. One of the things I recommend is to meet with your direct reports one-on-one once a week. And if you have too many direct reports to do that, then that is a sign that you're overloaded. And it's a sign that you're not going to be able to build the kind of trust with your staff that I would consider ideal for employee retention. And we know that losing an employee, let's say an ophthalmic technician, is going to cost your clinic about $25,000. That's the value of an employee turnover. And there are many things, I'm not going to get into that, but there's a real value to employee retention. And so, yes, there's a cost to having additional management. But there's also a cost to turnover. So just remember that when you're thinking about maybe adding staff or management, if you can retain employees, if it can help you retain employees, there's a real benefit. What are some other signs? Your own feelings. Are you feeling burnt out? Are you feeling unsupported in your job and pulled in too many directions? That is an important data point, and one that you can take to your managing partner or the doctor that runs your clinic and say, look, I don't feel supported. I'm being run ragged here. Because, as a manager, you need to have the mental clarity and the mental tranquility to be able to think productively about the clinic and its operations. And if every day when you think about coming into the office, the clinic, you're dreading it because you have too many things on your plate, then eventually you're going to burn out. You're going to kill the golden goose, or the goose that lays the golden eggs, which is you, right? Because you help the clinic function. As a manager, you help set the vision, set and hold people accountable, and provide encouragement and appreciation. The manager is kind of like the oil in the engine. You keep the engine running and keep the engine lubricated. Without oil in the engine, it's going to burn out. The parts are going to stop working together. They're going to burn out. We're going to have the wrong parts in the car, right? So the oil is key to making sure everything is tied together. And you are like the oil in the engine. We don't want that oil to drip out and to evaporate and to burn the engine out. And that's what happens when you are being overloaded. It's like running that engine at too many RPMs. You're going to burn it up. And so your own perception is also key here. That's a key diagnosis metric for if there is a problem here. Some of the problems that can be caused by a lack of leadership are turnover. We talked about that. Manager burnout. We just talked about that. Also, employees are going to be less productive because if there's a lack of leadership. Why is that? Well, they're going to have questions that aren't getting answered. They're going to have training and development needs that aren't getting met. They're just being kind of thrown in because there's a lack of support from leadership. I don't have time to train you. I don't have time to mentor you. I don't have time to meet with you every week. I'm hiring you. I'm throwing you in. I'm hoping that the other team members will train you. I don't have time to ask you how things are going. That's not an environment of high productivity. That's an environment of barely surviving. And so productivity is going to suffer when there's a lack of leadership. And you're going to have the last impact of a lack of leadership is going to be culture and trust are going to continue to erode. I talked about employees feeling like they can't find a manager. It's not just the times when they have like a patient question or they have a work-related question. Sometimes there's a concern that they have with a coworker. Sometimes there's a concern they have about the job itself, and they want to talk kind of big picture about their future within the clinic. If you are not available for those discussions, or when you are available, you're in a rush, you're not really paying attention, you're not listening, they are going to realize that, this is not someone who's going to be able to help me with this issue. They're overworked, they're stressed. If they even try to get your attention on a big picture issue, they are going to realize that you're too overburdened to be able to assist them. Okay. And so that's a big issue, and that's going to erode trust. And these are not things that happen overnight. None of these things happen, over the course of a weekend and everything's great on Friday, and then Monday, there's no trust and people are being unproductive. It doesn't work like that. It happens slowly over time. The more you're getting burnt out, as the trust begins to slowly erode, as they notice, gestures, facial expressions, tones of voice, that you're demonstrating, slowly but surely people will start to realize that you are just overloaded. You're not a person that they can go to with issues. And then standards will slip. You're not going to have as much time for giving feedback and encouragement either. So there's just so many impacts. There's so many ways that being understaffed as a management team can hurt your clinic. Some of the things that you can do, let's get into that here. One thing that you can do, and that doesn't even require hiring a new manager, is deputizing or delegating some of your work to what I would call like a team lead, or a training specialist, or a clinic workflow quarterback, or a guru, or something like that, right? You're not necessarily delegating true supervision. And I actually think I think this is a good stepping stone to determine if someone is right for a true management position. And so I'm a big fan of this type of sort of intermediate step. So maybe create a flow coordinator role or a training coordinator. Deputize someone to handle all the training for that team. So maybe you have a front desk trainer, or maybe you have a clinical, technician trainer. See how that person does. Do they have the people skills? Do they have the organizational skills? Are they committed? Are they encouraging? Do they have the technical knowledge? Are they willing to confront difficult issues, as they come up? Create a role like that and see how they do. That is a wonderful step before actually delegating true management to someone on your staff. And so I think that's a really good idea. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing that you can do, and that you should do, is assess potential leaders based on their you could say soft skills, or their emotional intelligence, or their people skills. That is equally important to their technical knowledge. To be a leader, you do have to have technical knowledge. You do have to be competent in clinic workflow. You have to be competent in technician skills. You have to be competent in handling, upset patients, or handling the software. Those things are all true, but equally important is the people skills, because this is a leadership role, whether you're actually getting supervision, or whether you are just putting someone in sort of a specialist coordinator, quarterback type of a role. It's still a leadership position. You have given them some additional authority. And if this is a person who is going to abuse that authority, or be bossy, or commanding, or overly meek, and they're not willing to step into that leadership, some of those behaviors are things that you want to watch out for, right? So look for people skills. And I don't just mean being nice. Being nice is not what I mean by people skills in management. What I mean is being encouraging, being direct yet diplomatic, being clear with your positive feedback, and being clear with supportive, constructive, or negative feedback. Clarity is really important. Timeliness is really important. Positivity is important, but it's not positivity without clarity, positivity without constructive feedback is not useful. It's not useful. So we're looking for a comprehensive skill set that in people skills when it comes to leaders. This show is sponsored by Seasoned Advice HR Services, where I help eye care businesses to make more money and save more money by hiring better, retaining better, and reducing your HR risk. If you would like an HR assessment or ongoing HR support, please reach out to me at seasoned-advice.com. We talked about technical skills, that's something that you're going to know, that you're going to have to determine in your clinic of what level of technical competence is required. But people, they will only respect that person if they have a certain minimum threshold of technical skill. But the cool thing is they don't have to know everything. And so the technician who knows how to do every single thing, honestly, ironically, sometimes that's not the best choice for management because they're so into the details and the fact that they know how to do everything that they lack the humility to know what they don't know. Or they'll have a tendency to just jump in and do everything because they know how to do everything. And so why shouldn't I just do it? And so the person who doesn't know everything is more likely to recognize that someone knows more than they do on a specific thing and empower that person. And so sometimes it's helpful for them to not know everything. And it's actually more helpful for them to know where their weak points are and encourage others to explore their strengths rather than having the leader jump in all the time. So you want to look for someone who's willing to trust others, willing to empower others, and willing to support them even when they might fail. So those are the things that I would look for in a potential leader. Hopefully this has been useful to you. We've talked about what to look for, the hallmarks of when you might need to hire a new leader or create a new leadership position. And we've talked about some of the things to look for in a leader, the traits to select for. There are some real benefits to hiring from within. Okay. If you can promote someone from within, there's some benefits. It shows people that, hey, there are growth opportunities here. And that will tend to make people want to stick around. It will tend to make them have more trust in the leader. Bring someone in from the outside. Sometimes people can kind of be skeptical and then take a little bit longer to trust that person. I'm not saying you should never hire from the outside. There's certainly a time and a place for that. But promoting from within is a good strategy. And again, it shows people that there are growth paths within your clinic. Another benefit that I want to point out when you promote someone from within or bring someone from outside is I have seen employees when they were promoted to a higher level, I have seen them really blossom and start to share more and be more vocal and be more expressive about their ideas. And so you can get new ideas, right, from promoting someone from within or bringing someone from the outside. You're going to get some new ideas and some fresh perspective on things that maybe you hadn't thought about. People will see things in a new way that you hadn't considered. So that's a real benefit to creating leadership positions or bringing someone from the outside that we don't often think about. And then one final benefit I want to share for expanding your leadership team, whether it's an informal non-leader role or a formal management position, is you're going to be hiring and onboarding and training better and retaining better, because now you've got help with that onboarding. Maybe you're allowing this person to sit in on interviews with you and getting their perspective. You're engaging them with onboarding new staff. And so new hires, when they come on board, they're feeling more supported because you aren't stretched so thin. And you're retaining better because there's another person that people can go to feel supported. So there's just there's benefits to be had to growing your leadership team. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal supervisor. In a future podcast, I'll probably talk more about selecting that manager, how to identify, who that is. But hopefully in this episode here, you've learned a little bit more about what the signs are that you do need to hire and the benefits that can come from doing that. I hope that was useful. I'd love to hear from you. Share your feedback with me. If you like this show, please follow here on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube, or follow on your favorite audio platform. And we'll see you next time here on iCare Leadership Live. Well, that brings this episode of iCare Leadership Live to a conclusion. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show on your podcast app and share it with someone who would value the content. I promise to bring you more guests and content to help make you a better iCare clinical leader. I also invite you to subscribe to my HR newsletter for iCare leaders. You can find information about that at seasoned-advice.com. Now go out there and lead with confidence.